Everyone, please stand. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Cade Museum for this April 27th meeting of the Rotary Club of Gainesville. My name is Tom Collette, your Sergeant at Arms. Welcome you today to our meeting. If you're watching this after the fact on Zoom, please register your participation by sending us an email, info@rotarygainesville.org. That's info@rotarygainesville.org. We begin our meeting today, as we always do, with a song and Pledge of Allegiance. And to lead us with that, with Gordon accompanying, here is Pete Enwall.
Well, here we are again. As I mentioned last week, I've been getting a lot of feedback from people about, my humor, and I actually got limited to one joke. But some of the comments have been that I'm too subtle, that you don't really understand the punchline, and I've always assumed that you were intelligent and were listening. Apparently, that's not an assumption that's valid. So I've done something to help with that, and so I just wanted you to know that the Harn has been doing experiments with butane, and they turned out they discovered that water is heavier than butane. And the conclusion they reached was it's because butane is a lighter fluid. That was the punchline. Okay, everybody ready? Okay, there we go. Okay. My wife complained to me the other day that I never finished anything. I explained to her that I had a black belt in the martial arts. We're going to sing. No, that's a half a joke each. So we're going to sing "God Bless America" today. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans wide with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, my home, sweet home. Join me in pledging allegiance to our flag, which I'll back up for. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pete. And now for our invocation, offered via Zoom by Kevin Thorpe. Kevin.
May we pray. Lord, we are forever grateful for this day, for this week, for this month, and for what this year has already meant. Thank you for every success that our country has seen. Thank you for bringing us to a place of returning to normalcy. We thank you especially for today's presentation and for our Alachua County Superintendent. Thank you for the subject matter that she will discuss as we continue to plan for our most precious resource, our children. We pray for your sake and for your glory. Amen.
Please remain standing if you are a visiting Rotarian or one of our group that has a guest today. Don Bugos, tasked with having the wireless mic to introduce.
Good morning. I'm Don Nussmeyer. I'm a visiting Rotarian from Lake Oswego, Oregon.
Anyone else? Don, anybody out there? Nope. Okay, we go right to our president, who's up next on our agenda. Please join me in welcoming to the podium your president, Matthew Brady.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Don, good to see you again, my friend. Glad you made it back. Still enjoying Florida. Much better here in the Southeast. So we got a busy agenda here and with a great presentation. So let's get started. I'm first going to ask Jacob Batim and Tony Barr if they come forward, please. Step up here, they can get you on the camera there. So fellow Rotarians, as president of the Rotary Club of Gainesville, it's my privilege and pleasure to formally induct and welcome a new member in our service organization. The person who stands before us today has indicated their willingness, interest, and determination to help to enhance the quality of life in our shared community, state, nation, and world. And you know from a previous presentation, he has done that in many ways. Through their involvement in the Rotary Club of Gainesville and by extension, their involvement in Rotary International, they will have this opportunity. I now ask all Rotarians in this room to show support of this new member by standing. Their sponsor and our fellow Rotarians standing now in support have indicated their willingness to extend the good works and service of Rotary by inviting this community leader to join us. The object of Rotary is to encourage and foster the ideal of service as a basis of worthy enterprise. The Rotary Club of Gainesville has been serving this community continuously since 1918. By coming before us today, you have shown your commitment to helping continue the work of Rotary by embracing the ideal of putting service above self. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you as a member of the Rotary Club of Gainesville. I encourage you to become a very active Rotarian and to become fully involved in the service and fellowship activities of this organization. I now present you with a Rotary pin, Tony, that is, and Rotary membership certificate. Congratulations and welcome to the Rotary Club of Gainesville. Thank you. Thank you. Hopefully you all recall the great presentation that Jacob brought just some months ago, and Tony has been bringing him and sponsored him in membership into the club, and I know he's going to be a great asset to this wonderful club. Speaking of membership, our man TJ Pache, and I apologize, I'm not sure if he's on Zoom or not, but he and his lovely Rotaractor, now wife, Courtney Evans, united in marriage this past Friday, the 23rd. So please offer congratulations to them. Yes. So now a quick little matter of business. So I've been sending you multiple emails fulfilling the obligation of advance notice for bylaws, but we have on your table, there's some slips. And then for those that are via Zoom, you'll have a pop-up here in just a minute, and you can vote online, click yay or nay. Two simple things. We're basically making the First Amendment so that if we have a Rotary board seat vacated, we'll follow the memberships voting and take the highest vote getter, okay, and place in there. But what this essentially does is allows us, if we fill a spot for a year, it would not exclude that individual for running for a full-term office again. Okay, so that's what we're doing here. The second is that our bylaws do not exclude online or digital voting, but we thought in this era, in the past year, we would explicitly state that it will allow voting. So just kind of a housekeeping thing. So vote online, fill out your sheet, and we have Don, if you would help, or Jeff was going to help collect those, that would be great in voting on that. All right. So as you all know, education is a primary area of focus of Rotary. And our club has traditionally embraced and exceeded in support of global and local education. This year alone, we have sponsored Reading Safari. And I'm going to stop right there because it's ironic. I have this scripted, right? And then we have Superintendent today. And Jeff walks in and has not been able to be here many times and hands me all these awesome notes from Reading Safari students. So again, timing's perfect. It's not scripted, I promise. And just so Dr. Carlee Simon can get a flavor, dear Mr. Brady, but this is to the whole club and especially Marcia Eubank and some others that are really invested in figuring out this new, not in live, but this Zoom format. But thank you for buying our snacks and supplies for Reading Safari, for Reading Zoo. Thank you for giving money to the zoo for the snacks and all the books and the supplies. We love you. How about that card? So I'm going to share more of those to come. So thank you all. Continue to participate. But as I was saying, not only this year have we committed to Reading Safari, but we've renewed 3 scholarships for seniors in our community. 500 pairs of undies, which we always get a chuckle, but what a need and what a blessing that is to the schools and nurses and those that are impacted in that unfortunate way. Cleanup and beautification at a local school, a new commitment to help with kindergarten roundup, recent increased commitment to the Reading Safari program. We're looking to double that in the future. And commitment outside of the school system to the science bus and STEM kits through the library system. Those are things I updated you all just in the past couple weeks. These partnerships have been possible thanks to many from our school district and largely from our friend for many years, Kelly Costamo. Today we hear from our new superintendent, Dr. Carlee Simon. She has a diverse and extensive background of more than just education, and today she presents Reimaging Alachua County Public Schools. Please welcome Dr. Carlee Simon.
Hi, thank you. My name is Carlee Simon. I'll give you a little bit of a background on myself. Should I be more in front? Oh, no, well, I won't do that. I'll worry I'll drop it or something. So I grew up here in Gainesville. I was born in Shands and I have 3 degrees from Shands, or from Florida. So I am a UF from birth, Gator, you know, the whole deal. My parents are educators in the Alachua County Public School System. They have probably combined about 80 years of experience. I grew up around the Duck Pond area, and so I went to Duval from K through 3rd grade, went to Metcalf for 4th, Williams for 4th, Metcalf for 5th, Howard Bishop and Eastside. My bachelor's degree is in architecture. And after that, I decided I needed a break and I was going to go into teaching, which little did I know that was not a break at all. My first teaching position, I taught high school woodshop and drafting. I was 23 years old and I had freshman boys and power tools, and you can imagine how that went. So I decided I'd rather teach high school mathematics. So I was a high school mathematics teacher for 5 years in the Tampa Bay area. I moved back to Gainesville, finished my graduate degrees. And in 2010, after I got my doctorate, I went to the University of Cincinnati and I lived in Cincinnati for 8 years. I focused my research on school finance and school law. And I focused quite a bit of my energy into equity and education. And I looked at it quite a bit from a financial lens, that how we spend our money tells you how we prioritize everything. And so I look at ways of reallocating resources to make sure we provide equitable education to all of our children. So I moved back here in 2018 to be closer to family. I have 3 boys. They are 2 are now at Buholtz and 1 will be at Fort Clark, but obviously the year of COVID has made things interesting. So I have a homeschooler, a dual enroller, and an e-school student. But we're looking forward to how we move forward. I had quite a bit of experience at the University of Cincinnati teaching online education. And so I'm excited about what COVID has done, because although it has completely changed our lives. I think there's some benefits and some new innovations that are coming out of it that I'm quite excited about. I think that the world of online education in K-12 is not going away. I think we can do some pretty impressive things to it. So there's a lot to talk about. I did decide to focus this presentation on the rezoning, but if you've been reading the news and all sorts of other things, I'm sure there's other questions you may want to ask me that don't have to do with the rezoning, and hopefully I can answer them. So one of the things that I've been charged with in my position, which by the way, is started December 4th, is to look at the equity. So as I told you, I went to school here as a child, and I went to school on the east side of town, and I had a very integrated childhood education experience. I had high quality education. I loved my entire experience. I was fairly saddened when I returned back to Gainesville because it segregated itself, and it was pretty disappointing to see what had occurred. So one of the tasks that I've been charged with by the board was to look at how our schools are distributed and address the segregation that has occurred, as well as balancing our student populations. And I'm not sure how much you've paid attention to the school enrollment, but our East Side schools are predominantly Black, high poverty. They're under-enrolled. Our West Side schools are over-enrolled, and they don't have the level of diversity that we would like to reflect our community. So with that, we have to do rezoning. We also have the half-penny sales tax, which means in the 12 years, we're having approximately $264 million that will be pumped into our infrastructure for our school facilities. Again, I went to school here, and many of the schools that I went to look very similar to what they do now. And so we have a level of deferred maintenance that we need to take care of, as well as we have to deal with the overpopulation on the west side. Some of that may actually be building new schools, and some of it may be the redistribution of our student population. So to give you an example of what I'm talking about, these are our high schools. If it's green, that means we have capacity in the building. If it's yellow, we are getting close. And if it's red, that means we are over capacity. And generally our over capacity is like 135%, not 105 or 100. So we're way over capacity. These are our middle schools. And these are our elementary schools. If you have been keeping up with it, the green in the middle, which is Terwilliger, that school is right now scheduled to be closed, and we're looking to sell the property. So those students at Terwilliger are actually going into the new school I for the year while we assess the rezoning component and redistribute. Now, I will talk about this quite briefly. I live in the Terwilliger school zone right now, and I can tell you I'm a person who could walk to school if I wanted to brave Newberry Road with my child. We tried that for a year, and it no longer is the neighborhood school that it used to be. So way back when, there was nothing past the mall. Now that's clearly not the case. And so we're looking at Terwilliger as it's no longer a space that's really conducive for young children to get education. We think that we can actually utilize that property to free up more capital funds to help us look at where our population growth is occurring and our deferred maintenance, like I have previously said. So as you can see, if you're on the west side, we're at capacity. If you're on the east side, we are below capacity. If you're on the west side, there's in all likelihood that one of your children is going to be eating lunch at 9:30 in the morning. That's a problem because it actually detracts from having a high quality education. The other thing that we have going on is not all of our students are able to be at the school. So as an example, Newberry Elementary is the one I talk about quite a bit. Newberry Elementary School does not have fifth graders on their elementary school campus. And that is becoming an issue because when we deal with student performance grades, and as we all are well aware, school grades do impact how communities are developed and how businesses want to locate themselves. And so if a community is putting themselves at risk by not having all of their K-5 students at that school, this is going to start to erode of what the quality school system is supposed to be like. So our goal is to get these fifth graders back to their school. We have this in a few other places where we don't have K-5. So at Archer and Irby, we will be focusing on that. Duval Elementary is going through a pause this year. So it had been reduced down from a K-5 down to just having kindergarten and preschool. That was really underutilizing the facility. It was also quite expensive when you look at a per pupil basis, because essentially all of the expenditures for operation costs divided by the population is a per pupil. If you have fewer people, obviously per person, it's much more expensive. So we're going to take a pause on that. We're going to work with the Duval community and see what they're interested in as far as, can we get a K-5 school here, or can we utilize this facility for some other resource that might benefit the community, such as healthcare, food, and a mixed use type of education experience for adults and for children. So these are the things we're working at. So obviously, as you can see, having the red and the green at this type of a drastic comparison is problematic for a countywide school system. And I want to tell you a little bit of how we got here. So before 2017, we had 9 concurrency zones for elementary schools. And how it works with concurrency zones is, if you're a developer and you want to develop in a zone, if there is capacity there, then you can develop. If there's not capacity there, you can only develop if adjacent zones have capacity. So when you had 9, there were better ways, or there was more ability to control the development in order to make sure that we had the educational infrastructure to support the growth. After 2017, the 9 concurrency zones were reduced down to 3. So when you have 3 concurrency zones and you're looking at adjacency, you are always adjacent to a zone that will have capacity as long as I have seats available within the district. So this becomes problematic, because essentially if you apply for concurrency, I can guarantee you, you will always be concurrent, which means you will always be able to develop. This becomes problematic because, like I said, I teach school finance, or I taught school finance way back when. I'm now actually, I guess, practicing what I taught. So I find it a problem to be responsible with taxpayer funding if I have capacity across the district and we're talking about building schools on the west side. So if you look at my capacity in my elementary school right now, we have about 1,800 seats. The new school I that was built is 900 seats. So for elementary school students, I have 2 empty schools capable of being filled across the district. This goes on with middle school and high school as well. The centers are a little, I wouldn't quite lean on those because those are for a very specific student population. But essentially, we're still at about 4,000 empty seats. So when we talk about building schools and we're talking about utilizing taxpayer funding responsibly, we really need to make sure we fill our empty seats before we add to our capacity. The other component is, schools are expensive. Actually, educating human beings is expensive, but facilities are expensive as well. And so things that I'm wanting to kind of inject in the community is a level of understanding of what we're talking about. So when people say, why aren't we building an elementary school yet? There's a few things that we need to factor in. So first off, I told you the half-cent sales tax is $264 million, and we collect that money after the 12 years are over. I'll talk more about how that money has been used right now. But essentially, that's not a lot of money when you look at the over 40 structures that I currently have, and the fact that I need more, and the fact that we're running into decades of deferred maintenance. So an elementary school is 25 acres of land, and it's also $35 million. The middle is 35 acres, and the average cost is $45 million, and a high school is 65 acres, and the average cost is $70 million. So this is the sales tax. So this talks about the $264 million. So essentially we're earning about $22 million a year. Like I said, it collects over the 12-year referendum period. So what we did is we front-loaded this, which essentially means we took out a loan to pay for the facilities on the front end. And that's where Metcalf, Howard Bishop, Oakview, Idlewild, and School I are funded from. So if you take that 264 and you take off the bond that we took out, which is the loan, the 220 million, you're left with 144 million. So if somebody says, I need to build a high school, I've cut that money in half. The other thing that we have going on is that right now we've taken the money on the front end. The rest of it we want to spend as cash on hand. So that means I have to get $22 million every year. And so in order to collect the 70 million, this is going to take me over 3 years. This also includes the fact that I have to pay down the bond that we've already taken out. So These are the things that we're factoring in, and this is why it's crucial for us to look at a rezoning as well as just looking at the facilities, because we do need to move the population to balance it out. One other thing that we're looking at are impact fees. And I'll just give a quick explanation of what impact fees are. But essentially, if a developer is coming into a community and they want to build, they're putting an impact on the community. That's obviously, we've seen components as far as streets and water and all of that. But what we also are having is a school facility impact, because not all of our schools have the capacity on the west side. So we do not currently have school facility impact fees, and this is something we're looking into. Our RFP actually, I believe, is closing next week, and we will be looking at the bids and examining who could do some research for us to help us assess our impact fees and the possibilities. But essentially, if you were to build and the impact fees are in place, then any new build would have to pay an additional fee. That fee would go directly into supporting the school facilities on the community that's impacted. This is really important, I think, to also emphasize that when we are developing in areas that the development is essentially taxing that community, people across the county are supporting that type of development and perhaps not actually having that experience or the benefit to their community. And I think that's one of the complications of a county-wide district, is that it's so large. And so people in Hawthorne are partially funding the development on the west side and how that's impacting that community. So we're looking at the original facilities timeline. Back when that facilities timeline was put in place, there was a different board, a different superintendent, and rezoning was not a part of the discussion. So things have changed. And so we are going back and looking at the facilities timeline. I do also feel, the way I look at it, and I think this is from the fiscal component as well as the architectural balance, there was a plan to touch every school facility in 5 years. I mean, I think that's problematic. When I remodel homes, I don't remodel every single room. I start in one place and I work my way through, and I make sure that there's a sequence of events. And so we're looking at those events and we're trying to see what really we need to prioritize. COVID has actually changed our priorities significantly. Air conditioning has always been important, but it's now definitely ramped itself up, including allowable components of fresh air being within the facilities. We're also looking at program planning. So I know that there's a lot of discussion when I talk about rezoning. I hear a lot of people of, oh, don't bus my kids across town. First off, I don't really care for driving very much, so I'm not going to try to make it where everybody buses their kids around, especially with children. It's a lot. So I get it. But I also know that people will go to places that they want to, because that's the nice part about demand. And so what I am looking at is looking at programs that people are willing to take the extra mile and commute. So one of the things that we're looking at specifically to pilot for next year is we have Metcalf and Bishop, and I told you I went to both of those schools. And if you haven't gone, I suggest you drive by. We have put, as the school district and taxpayers, $42 million in 2 blocks. And it's a significant improvement. And if you look at the real estate values around that area, you will see that it's already starting to show itself. So what we are trying to do is we're going to take the Howard Bishop Metcalf that is currently there, and we're going to expand it so every student has access to that high quality instruction. We believe it's important that all children are able to have that participation. We're also looking at Metcalf, and we're focusing on a STEAM magnet where all students at Metcalf will have that experience. We'd like to see it as essentially the pipeline of, you come to Metcalf, you're going to get yourself prepared for the tech component. So when you get to Howard Bishop, you're ready for that. And then we're looking at our CTE programs. We're looking at collaborations with Santa Fe College, as well as any of our high school programs, and then into secondary education. I see, and my colleagues and I believe have talked quite a bit about it, that we really are very much interested in the cradle to adulthood component and that type of pathway. We're also looking at a dual language immersion program where we will have half the student population will speak Spanish as a native tongue, and the other half will be English, and the curriculum in the school will be half English and half Spanish. We have a few other magnets that we're looking at as well. We are interested very much in whole school magnets. The school within a school creates segregation within a school. So we'd like to end that. And the goal is that people will find that it is worth them driving. I'm so confident that the dual language immersion program is going to do well, that I believe we will be drawing from students out of the county. And then the other component is working with our government partners. I don't know if you've watched the joint meeting, but essentially all of us have been receiving, the county, the city, and myself, additional federal dollars to help us focus on addressing the COVID component as well as the inequities. And actually there's a nice benefit of a school facility infrastructure improvement. And so we have been collaborating on ways to make sure that we don't have redundancy, and we're working together. One of those examples is broadband access to all students, and in fact, all educators within the county. When we had to go to COVID, we actually have employees. So it wasn't a component of whether they could afford it or not. It was they did not have access. So these are things that we're looking at. So here's some pictures of some of our projects. The one on the top left, that's Idlewild. Idlewild, the ground has been broken, walls are starting to come up, but it's our last one that the ground has been broken, and it should be done about December of this year. I is the one at the bottom. This is Metcalf. And what I like about Metcalf is this green that you're seeing, it faces, it's the east and west, so it's facing west. And I find it exciting because there's these huge windows of glass. And when you're standing in Metcalf and you look out on the horizon, what you're going to see is you see Howard Bishop. You see where you're going. You see your future in front of you. This building is going to be gorgeous. The area is going to be gorgeous. And I believe what we're doing is we're bringing back a community that has had some turmoil. And I think that this is something that is going to be amazing. And I think we're going to change the town. Here's Howard Bishop. The other component is, and this is one of those joint efforts that I was sharing, on the left, you will see this is where our wild spaces, public places collaboration is. That track is being redeveloped. We're putting tennis courts and pickleball courts and basketball courts on this property so the community can access it. So not only do we have two beautiful educational facilities, but we will also have a public space for people to interact and engage our school community. One of the things that people have been asking me about is how to do zoning. And one of the things that I'm trying to avoid is the territorialism that we have when people look at their elementary schools that they're zoned for. There tends to be division when I have my house and I have my home zone school. And I don't think it's doing anything good for us. So one of the things I'm looking at is a component called cluster zoning. So your house is actually zoned for a cluster of schools. The cluster is not a regional cluster. The cluster is a diverse group of high quality schools that you and your family can determine what you want to do. I was just sitting and having a discussion about how we all have children, and it's interesting when you have more than one that they're really very different individuals. And what I like about the cluster zoning component is that I have 3 boys. So one of my children might prefer one school where another curriculum at another school might meet the need. I can also have all my children go to the same school, and I will be able to have that choice in a zone that helps balance the student population. We're also looking at making sure that the populations are balanced by looking at income and making sure that we have a range of income from high wealth to high poverty and everyone in between, because we believe that diverse education benefits all students, our high wealth students and our high poverty students. So we're focusing on this summer doing community engagement. I mean, I guess this is one of the kind of early pre-planned community engagement components, but we are having the summer listening sessions where we're going to go into the communities, find out what they're interested in, what they're needing. I have ideas, but I definitely want to make sure that people in the community are able to express theirs, and good ideas are good ideas no matter where they come from. So I'm looking for those opportunities. We will be improving our website. This is also part of our ESSER component because the ESSER is the federal funding. We need to communicate better, period. Everybody does. We also need to make sure that we are listening and receiving information better. And so our website will hopefully be developed for that, to engage with the community, not just on the rezoning, but on all sorts of aspects of serving our student population and our families. We also have some more receiving components as far as this Let's Talk. It's an app that will go on the website, which will help us monitor our communication better, and then surveys. And that's it. Thank you. Any questions?
If anyone has questions for our superintendent, Don Bugos has the microphone. If you're on Zoom, we encourage you to place your questions in the chat that is provided, of course, for you through Zoom. We'll go to our first question. Please
All
state
right.
your name and your question.
Jeff Montgomery. Thank you, Carlee.
Mhm.
Has there been any thought to expanding the school year? You know, the 180 school year is an anachronism that goes back at least a century. Other developed countries have much longer school years, and it just seems to me that it is, especially with COVID interrupting things this past year, maybe interrupting things in the future. Seems to me more kids in class for more time would be beneficial for everyone. Could you speak to that?
Yeah, so thank you. So we are, one of the benefits of the listening session is to hear more than just what's going on with the rezoning. And so I believe these conversations will come up. The school year being extended is important. And I think as far as I see it, everything is on the table for a discussion. We obviously will have the additional complexity of negotiating with teachers unions and all of that. The other thing that we're looking at, and I serve on the board of the Children's Trust, is the Children's Trust is doing quite a bit of engagement with summer programs and after school programs. And so I think that there might be, if we can't extend the school year within my district, I think there are ways that we can collaborate. And actually we're working on it this summer of providing, even what I need to do is I need my workforce of bus drivers to continue to work over the summer, because if I lose bus drivers, it's actually a very hard and challenging field to fill, because people need to get their CDL license and it takes time. And as we can see nationwide, it's pretty challenging to have high quality bus drivers. So what we're going to do with our ESSER funding is the summer programs that are being offered, we're going to provide the transportation. And that is another component that's incredibly important to our families, is access. We have a lot of people who would like to do summer programs to continue the academic components, but when they don't have the ability of getting there and getting home, that does create a problem. And so as far as I see it, anything's on the table. We're looking also at extending our evenings, and this goes back into the online education. I mean, we can figure out ways for you to learn whatever time of day, even really wherever you are in the world.
I have to stand up, sorry. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Can't imagine why anybody would want this job, but
It's a good week to say that.
enjoying the challenge. Looking at your first slide, it appeared that with the schools that are at capacity on the west side and the schools that are not at capacity on the east side, the simplest solution is to simply encourage developers and people to live on the east side.
Mm-hmm.
And the county commission had an opportunity to approve the Weyerhaeuser project a couple of years ago, which would have developed industry and jobs on the east side, and they did not take that opportunity. So my question is, to the degree that you can share it with us, what chance is there that the county commission would also agree that incentivizing developers and people to live on the east side is a possibility?
Well, I can tell you that I think I have a very good relationship with the county commissioners. We have these discussions because that is one of the, it's kind of the chicken and the egg, which came first, the quality neighborhood, the quality school. And so you run into these types of components, and one of it is housing. I grew up, like I said, on the east side of town, and it needs the growth. I do know that the city is very much interested in our bus depot. I'm interested in them having our bus depot, but we need to make sure that we have a bus depot for that. And that's obviously a city component, but I think everybody's starting to realize that we are unbalanced. I mean, the county's being taxed on the west side, and I think that they're looking at it. At least I feel very comfortable that they are listening to me and we're having some quality discussions.
Thank you for coming. I really think that's great. From my understanding is we don't have enough teachers in order to come and be able to do two things. One, Spanish, and then of course English. How are we going to handle that?
Well, okay, that's a huge problem. I mean, across the country, we are running into teacher shortages. As I told you, I was at the University of Cincinnati and I was in the College of Education. And the College of Education was losing students who were applying. Now, I also have a bachelor's in architecture and I became a teacher. I did not get formally trained in the education setting until my graduate degree. So we have other options, but I think we have to work on, one, I know I personally have to work on the quality of the work environment. I think teachers, that matters to people as far as, you know, maybe we can't have the compensation, but if we have the space that makes you feel like you have a high quality life and you're experiencing, you know, the benefit of working for us, then you'll continue. So that's something I have to work on. As far as, you know, addressing it, we're going to have to, it's going to be a progress, but I do know, like specifically on your Spanish component, one of the things, again, going back into the online education that I find quite exciting, and we did this in Cincinnati, so I know it can be done here, is, so my son is in Buchholz, and we only have one German teacher in the entire county, and she's a Buchholz, and she's a rock star. She is amazing. If we can work with our teachers and incentivize it, she could actually teach that class. She is teaching it actually currently in a high flex model. So she teaches face-to-face and she teaches online. Why can't a kid at Hawthorne sit in the library with earphones on and learn German from a teacher standing in Buchholz? So I think these are the ways that we're going to have to work through this, because this is unfortunately one of the, you know, when you neglect a field, I think this is what happens.
Mike Conrad, thank you so much for coming here, and I'm glad you didn't proceed on through architecture.
Well, I get to build schools.
Yeah, well, we need somebody who has a financial perspective, who knows how to spend the money wisely. And I, for one, my wife taught in Alachua County Schools for over 20 years. She taught at Duval and Head Oak and so forth. So she has a real appreciation of the needs of the East Side schools. And to see those kids coming into those schools, they don't even eat or sleep well on the weekends. They count on the breakfast and the lunch at the schools provided. It's so much an important part of the community. And to rehabilitate some of those schools, especially the mechanical systems, are just a mess, as you well know. To do what you're doing, I applaud, because we need to improve the East Side. For, you know, we have a horrible poverty rate in this community. And developing the schools, rehabilitating them, and creating opportunities for those students of immense importance to all of us. And we all have to realize that that's the case, because we can suppress the levels of crime and so forth. I can go on, but it's really important that our schools are worthwhile for those communities and they provide promise. And that seems to be what you're talking about. The only other thing I would say, what about vocational education? There has been a diminution of vocational education over the last several years. They closed Lofton, and you know, not all of our kids are going to be going to you know, higher education. We need carpenters and electricians and mechanicals, so forth. So you could address that too. Thank you.
So yeah, I'm happy to. So two things. One, I told you about the ESSER funds, but I will give you just a little bit of insight. If things go according to plan, and I will tell you right now, I understand that the House of Representatives is looking at the ESSER funding. They're trying to figure out how they can control the allocation when it comes down to the district level. So right now it's still kind of loose, but I'm hoping by the end of the week I'll have a better idea of the guidance. But if it goes the way we anticipate, this district will get roughly $100 million to focus on the recovery from COVID. And I look at that money very specifically as I am not interested in buying things. I'm interested in actually using this as seed money to develop sustainable systems that improve things. Because I think that there's a lot of things that education has always wanted to do, but they've just never had the ability, the time, the money to really rebuild the entire mechanism to serve our student populations, because we have bigger issues. I'm very much focused on developing our community schools model. We have a community schools model here in Florida. There's one in Ohio that we used as well. And essentially it sees the school as an anchor of the community. And I do actually believe that I was getting my second PhD in design, construction, and urban planning. And I did a whole project on where I think schools are the anchors of communities. And they're very much important. And there's ways that they can serve more than just educating kids. They actually can serve the whole community. But back to vocational components. So again, I'm interested in architecture and I'm also interested in building schools. And it's a challenge to build schools right now when you run into workforce limitations as far as high quality skilled labor, as you know, plumbers, electricians, all of those components. So I am in the education business, which works out well because we know that we have people who would go into fields. Back in Cincinnati, our plumber was he was the president of our country club. Plumbers make great money. So why aren't we going into these professions more so? And so we are looking at collaborating with Santa Fe College. Actually, Dr. Brody has been an excellent partner. We're looking at a 2-generation model. So the parent, who would be roughly in the late 20s age group, would be in a CTE field getting a certification in an area that we're looking at based on the market needs. And their child, which would be in our elementary school system, they'd all go to Lofton. So while the parent is getting trained, we're working with the child, tutoring them. Everybody has a family dinner together. We build this community, and then we're hoping to kind of build this cycle because we do need it. And I'm actually talking quite a bit about, I need these people to come into our system. So not only do I think I can get into the internship component and the skilled training, but I believe at the end of it all, I can hire you within my program. It is. And I am looking at, back to the East Side discussion, I'm looking at this at the Lofton area as well as East Side High School and seeing what we can do to really start driving. Like, if you want to train your workforce, come see us. I'll find them, definitely.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Dave Edwards used to handle vocational education for Alachua County School District, and he had spoken at this club about the importance of vocational education and bringing students along. So their only logical vocational opportunity wasn't McDonald's, but in fact they could, you know, as Jerry Painter always used to say, they could have a 3-2 house with a boat in the front yard if they went and became a plumber or a union electrician or something. Those are very real opportunities, and we need to display those to our kids so they know that, and then they have an avenue for proceeding accordingly. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Buddy Goodman. My question really piggybacks on Jeff's, and it's not so much to do with infrastructure, but have we measured the negative impact on the academic progress of our kids resulting from the pandemic? Do we know what that is? How do we do it? Is there a way to measure it? That always bothers me. And then how do we know when we've recovered? And, you know, how do we do it in addition to maybe, you know, going to school longer?
So we do have progress monitoring going on, but we also are running into, there's just complications within the pandemic associated with some of our students are currently homeschooled. So we're trying to take the baseline with the FSA this spring. We are limited in the aspect that not every family wants to come on campus due to what is personally going on in their lives. And I became a widow at 36. I had a 9, 6, and a 3-year-old child. And I can tell you now that if the pandemic was going on when my husband was getting chemo treatment, I wouldn't have been coming to school. So I'm also trying to respect people's boundaries and what they have in their own life. So we will have to take the baseline with the FSA, but we are doing progress monitoring now. We do know that there is an impact of COVID on us. We also do know that something that I think a lot of people need to understand is that we have some people who have not done well in the digital aspect, but we also have many students that have flourished. And so it's not all the way across the board. What we will also be doing when students come back, and this is one of the benefits of the ESSER funding, is that we are creating all sorts of recovery systems as far as high dose tutoring. High dose tutoring would be a teacher for students at the largest, and actually as they get older, that becomes more one-to-one high dose tutoring, and it's about 30, 40 minutes 3 times a week. But within that, we're also going to progress monitor, because I think what's really important and what I value is making sure that people understand the systems we have in place and whether they're working, because we don't need to continue to do something that's not showing the results. So we're also not only doing the progress monitoring, but we want to really be developing our dashboard so people understand what's happening at the school. And it's not just this internal thing that we as the district know, but no one else in the community does, because I think accountability is important as well as transparency.
Thanks for being here. My name is Mike Comer. I'm a banker, and April is Financial Literacy Month. Any thoughts with regarding developing financial literacy in schools, basic budgeting, investing, starting early to prepare for the future?
So I know that we have some of these in place. I'm sure that we need to expand this more. And speaking specifically about like where we are with that, I wouldn't be able to give you the specifics of what schools have it, but I do know that this is of interest. I do know also in this collaboration that I'm talking about with Dr. Brody, those were also components, were to develop the financial literacy of the families to support them. I think on top of it, what we're looking at with our school facilities component is that I know my board members are very much interested in having collaborations with small business, minority and veteran and female-owned businesses. And we are running into a component of there's not as many as we would like. And so I think the other thing that I'd like to talk more with Dr. Brody of is not only do I want to work on developing our workforce in this collaboration, but I think we should also look at how we can help develop small businesses and support them.
How about a nice hand, everyone, for Dr. Carlee Simon?
Thank you.
Thank you again, Dr. Simon. I appreciate the opportunities that you're looking at for our community and our students. This year, our theme is Rotary Opens Opportunities. So I would love to give you a small token of appreciation for your time here today. Thank you. Thank you again. So Mike, my fellow financial guy, I was impressed this week. My son brings home a 10th grade Algebra 2 assignment, and they're working on auto payments and presentation and how much it cost over the life of it. It was beautiful. The only problem, well, I say problem, is I need to talk to about the compounding interest factor because, wow, I wish we could do that. So it was a little distorted in my opinion, but hey, it was a great exercise. And he was like, whoa. So I'm like, that's what I've been telling you. You know, I've only been doing this for 20 plus years and you're finally listening to somebody at least, right? So, all right. Thank you again. Great day. Great to see everybody. It's been great seeing this room filled up each and every week. And I promise, again, do not play on the phone. I look through at those that are Zooming in. And if you ever want to take that chance, pull it up while you're in here, mute it, and look at your other fellow Rotarians that are Zooming in and try to encourage them to put their smiling face on screen so you can see them and chat and say hey as well. So before we adjourn, a quick quote, thanks to Tom. He always gives me about 3 or 4 to choose from. The beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you. B.B. King. Have a great day, fellow Rotarians.